G'day and welcome to ReDriven. Now look, normally with these videos I start by having some attempt at a witty monologue, but not today. We're going to start this very differently. So here we go. This Celica, 460,000 kilometers. That's 285,000 miles in a unit of measurement that makes no sense whatsoever. Now to put that into perspective, that's 11 times around the world. But what does that immense distance, in this case more than 23 years of use, do to a Celica? Yes, they have their immense fans like YouTube sensation Scotty Kilmer, but are these actually any good, especially after this many years and this many kilometres? What goes wrong with them? What do they like to live with on a daily basis? What do they cost to own and operate? And most importantly, should you buy one? Let's find out. Now, before we get deep into the Celica, I should mention that this car's name is actually Lola. Yes, it's a Celica, but this is Lola. So in the video, out of respect for her, I might be mentioning her as Lola from time to time. Now the Celica nameplate has been with us since way back in 1970, and this is actually a 6th generation car available from 1993 to around about 1999. And I should mention in this video, look, we will be focusing on the Australian variant of the 6th generation Celica, but if you're not from Australia, don't freak out, don't panic, because everything we're going to be going over should relate to Celicas in your local market. This generation was available in primarily 2 different trim levels, although a few dealer and factory limited editions were released, just like the SXR here. Plus, the most potent of this generation Celica was the World Rally inspired GT4. Depending on location, the Celica was available as a 2-door liftback coupe, just like Lola here, or as a convertible and featured 1.8, 2 litre and 2.2 litre 4-cylinder engines, again depending on where you're watching this from. This generation also received various aesthetic, equipment and mechanical updates during its life cycle on almost a yearly basis. And look, while we'd love to go into every graphic detail of what every variant and upgrade featured, that would just take way too long. But we have gathered all that information and we've put it in our handy ReDriven cheat sheets. Our cheat sheets are invaluable as they provide a full breakdown of the car's model range, its common problems, what you need to look out for before handing over your hard-earned cash, how much of that cash you should be handing over, and so much more. Check it out at redriven.com or in the link below. Now guys, if you own one of these Celicas or you're a Celica expert, or if you are actually Scotty Kilmer and you've noticed that we've missed something in this video about the Celica, please let us know in the comments below. Obviously we do our best to cover as much as we can, but we generally find it's those that own these cars that are the true experts. So yeah, if we've missed something, let us know in the comments. So, does it look good? I think so. I think it's a pretty attractive car, especially in GT4 form. These look awesome, except for the stupid, huge rear wing, but you can get the smaller rear wing. But yeah, I think Lola is a quite an attractive, mature lady. Now look, if you are in the market for one of these things, there are a few issues and problems that you need to watch out for, which we'll get to in a second. But I should mention that Lola here is 23 years old. She's very rarely garaged, and she's spent most of her life getting knocked around in car parks and traffic and stuff like that. But considering all that, she's in phenomenal shape. Like even down the side of the car where there should be heaps of little dings and knocks from trolleys and whatnot, there really aren't any. Maybe they've used Toyota Hilux gauge metal on the panels, but I can't believe for a car of this age, with this level of experience, she looks great. Although I should mention that Lola has actually had her front bar and rear spoiler repainted, but considering that she's very rarely garaged, very rarely washed, the paint is holding up incredibly well on these. After this many years, you're going to see a little bit of a paint blemish here and there, maybe, possibly, but even then, this is fantastic. Even the way the door handles and the locking mechanisms, and even the way the doors feel and sound opening and closing, even the boot is the same. They all feel solid and positive. Just so impressive. Now we will be covering a few of the common issues and faults in the what goes wrong section coming up. So how's the interior? Well, from a design aspect, it feels like a mini version of a 90s Supra with its swoopy design language, and with the sea of black plastic and even the smell in here, it's all very 90s, which is most likely why I love it so much. As far as the sitting position goes, you're so hunkered down in full sports car position. It's great. Although I've got a funny feeling that the TRD steering wheel and TRD gear knob may not be official TRD items. Now, wear and tear wise, after 460,000 kilometers and 23 years, is pretty good. There's a bit of not paint missing, but some of this surface effect is missing. But all these buttons, you gotta remember, these buttons have been pushed probably hundreds of thousands of times, and they still feel they still feel great. Wear and tear on the seats, they are starting to show their age a little bit, but they're not too bad still. Like, they're starting to kind of peel off here and there are some rips and tears in the driver's seat. But the actual cushioning feels spot on. Like, they don't feel dodgy. There's no creaks, no rattles, no squeaks. Amazing. Some of the other interior trim, like here, is starting to show its age a little bit, but like, there's actually a decent amount of squidge for a car this age. Even the air conditioning is excellent. Like, it has been regassed numerous times in the 23 years, but it is bloody cold when you want it cold. Another design feature that I personally love, and maybe one of you guys can tell me why, I love white dials on a car. I don't know, I find it kind of sporty and understated. It's very cool. Okay, now the back seat. I'm 1.125 brazza tall. This is in my driving position, and it's bloody cramped back here. I've got to do a kind of promiscuous style leg spread. My feet have no real room. My head's squished up against the roof. Yeah, not a lot of room. Not that enjoyable, to be honest, in the back seat if you're a grown male. Wear and tear in the back seat is actually really good because only like the devil would put adults back here, so these back seats have very rarely been used. Although, there is a bit of a coffee stain up here. I think it's a coffee stain. I hope it's a coffee stain. Anything else would be a bit gross. So how's the tech? Well, if you find one of the very rare examples like Lola here that has the factory infotainment system, the tech is crap. Yes, it has a CD player and AM and FM radio, but forget about any kind of Bluetooth connectivity or smartphone support. Even driver tech is near zero, with only some later variants featuring cruise control, but forget parking sensors, reversing cameras, or anything from this century, although it does have central locking and power windows. Even air conditioning was an optional extra in these, but to update like the infotainment system is super easy. It's a double DIN head unit size, so you can actually get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto aftermarket for these things easily. So is it practical? Well, look, in the boot, yes, this has got a decent sized boot. Plus these seats, they fold nearly flat, giving you even more space. And because it's a liftback, the actual area to get things into the boot is pretty easy, although this higher lip can be a bit of a challenge to lift heavy things over. But besides that, it's really practical in the boot. It's actually comfier than sitting in the back seat. Practicality in the back seat? No. And practicality up front, you've got decent sized door bins. You can't get a bottle in there, but they're not too bad. You've got an ashtray. Disgusting. You've got a little cubby hole here, but this is cool. You've got a hidden slide out pair of cup holders. The really cool thing with these, if you've got, if you're a bit of a wanker like me and you're like a piccolo or an espresso, you can actually adjust the size of the hole to fit your espresso or piccolo. There's also a really good sized glove box. One thing of note is that this car was invented before the old smartphone was even a concept, but it fits perfectly right there. Look at that. Amazing. Okay, so what goes wrong with these things? We're going to get to the mechanical stuff in a sec, but like many cars this age, the big thing to watch out for is rust. Okay, make sure you check the sills, especially where the door meets the front wing. Check the wheel arches, the exhaust, and make sure you get underneath and check the underbody. Have a look around the windows, windscreen, and under the bonnet and in the boot, and look, make sure you lift up the carpets in the boot as well. Now, another issue that you might come across, because these cars are getting a bit older and therefore getting a bit cheaper, a lot of people that buy them don't comprehensively insure them. So if they have a crash, a lot of times I'll go and get it fixed on the cheap rather than actually getting it done properly. So you've got to make sure you look for any dodgy repair work and obviously accident damage. So look for any overspray, especially in the wheel arches. Pop the bonnet, look for overspray under the bonnet and around the engine bay. Look at all the panel gaps, make sure they're all accurate, and just check the paint in general. Is it the same color and does it match inconsistency and texture? If they're all out of whack, yeah, we'd walk away. Also, while we're talking about paint, look, this one is in exceptionally good condition, and most Celicas, even after 20 years in the ridiculous Australian climate, are wearing pretty well, but some of them will need a full respray. But it's important to know that a full respray on one of these things can potentially cost more than what the car costs to buy. So if it needs a full respray, rather than doing that properly, we just find a better condition one. Okay, inside common issues and problems. Look, honestly, there's not many. Like, some of the interior trim can kind of start peeling off, but that is so easily fixed. Now, mechanically, what goes wrong with these things? Well, look, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not qualified to give you an answer on that, but Jim is.
First of all, apologies for the slightly dodgy audio. It's actually pissing down here, and I can't control the weather yet. When these Celicas were made, Toyota was really starting to stand out from the crowd in terms of engineering and reliability. And you've heard it all before. If you look after something and you service it, it'll last longer. But this car has done over 450,000 Ks, and it has been serviced fastidiously, but it's never had a serious mechanical breakdown. It's had some shock absorbers and an alternator along the way, but I have to emphasise, never a serious mechanical breakdown. You see, the fact that these things are still around, it's not just because they've been well looked after, it's because mechanically they were really well made. Now, having said that, if you're looking at one, because of their age, you're going to have to check some things that are affected by age. Have a good look at all the cooling system and the coolant hoses, the vacuum lines, just check for signs of wear and cracks. And another thing, the timing belt. If you're in doubt of the timing belt history, replace it. One other thing, if you look at a list of all surviving cars from this era, with over 200,000 Ks on them, around 75% of them are Toyotas.
Is it safe? No, not particularly. There are no airbags as standard in lower spec variants. They were actually an optional item. But the higher spec ZR did get a driver's side airbag, and ABS didn't make an appearance until 1996, but again, only in the top spec trim. Forget like stability control or traction control or any active safety systems at all. And look, I don't know if the ANCAP safety system can go into minus numbers, but this car would potentially be in the minus numbers. But just know it is safer than a motorbike. So what's it like to drive? Well, after 23 years and nearly 500,000 kilometers, it's bloody lovely. Like, this generation Celica was never, you know, an earth-shattering performance car, maybe except the GT4 variant, but even now, it's just a lovely thing to drive with just like a smattering of sports cars sprinkled on top. Obviously, with this many kilometers on it, I'm not exactly going to rev it out or throw it into a corner like some sort of maniac, but the performance is actually still pretty respectable. Like around town or on the freeway or even out on these country roads, like, it's certainly not fast by any means, but as I said, it's a respectable amount of power. It's got enough power to still get up and boogie. Even the way it steers and handles is like, it's really nice. Like, you know, look, it's not razor sharp by any means, but just enjoyable. I should also mention, this car has got new struts fitted, so the way it handles and the way it absorbs the bumps on this road, like, really good. Even the gear change, it still feels nice and accurate and mechanical. It doesn't feel like some sort of flaccid piece of spaghetti. It's just enjoyable to use, although the automatic versions of these are pretty uninspiring. Yes, there are a few rattles and squeaks in here, but if you'd done nearly 500,000 kilometers on Australian roads, you'd probably have some rattles and squeaks as well. For comparison, we tested a Mini recently, which had a quarter of the amount of kilometers of this, was half the age of this, and it sounded like a Maraca versus this. The link to that video is just up there. The thing that's most impressive about this thing is that it's not until you look at the odometer that you realize how many kilometers it's got. Like, if someone was to say to you, this has got about 150,000 Ks on it, you'd go, yeah, that feels about right. I can't believe this has 460,000 kilometers on it, because it just doesn't feel it. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't drive like a new car at all. It's clearly a car from the late 90s. But it's so impressive of how well this drives and steers and brakes and does everything it's supposed to do for the amount of kilometers it's got. Incredible. Although, if you are in the market for one of these and you're test driving it, make sure you listen for any weird mechanical sounds, any clunks coming from the suspension, any squealing coming from the engine, any really like violent rattles. It should feel relatively tight. Like, finding one as tight as Lola here is going to be a challenge, but if it feels like dodgy, yeah, don't get near it. Pricing here in Australia kicks off from as little as $3,000 for, let's be honest, kind of pretty dodgy, shitty ones, and it tops out at around about $13,000 for pretty mint condition ones. But if you want a GT, for example, you're going to be looking in the $50,000 range. And for pricing in the US and the UK, here's a graphic. Toyota claim a fuel consumption figure of anywhere between 6.6 to 10 litres per 100 kilometres. And on this test, well, it's hard to know what we're seeing on this test because this car has no trip computer and we're not very good at maths, so we're not even going to try to guess what it's getting. But we figured if you're in the market for one of these, chances are fuel consumption isn't that high on the priority list anyway. Toyota offered a 3-year or 100,000 kilometre warranty on all these Celicas, and if our maths are correct, that means that none of these have any kind of factory support left on them anymore. Servicing is recommended at every 12 months or 10,000 kilometres, but considering how old these are getting, we'd probably up that to every 6 months and 5,000 kilometres. Also, because it's a Toyota, there is support everywhere, and parts shouldn't cost a fortune, should be easy to get, and they're kind of fun to work on. Okay, so should you buy one? Well, let's be realistic. This generation Celica is not fast or overtly sporty, it's not very safe, it lacks any sort of technology, and they're kind of practical as long as no one sits in the backseat, and they're getting pretty bloody old. But there's a huge flip side to this argument. For what the Celica costs these days to buy, there are very few other cars that offer such incredible reliability and genuine longevity while still being really enjoyable to drive and provide like understated sports car styling and dynamics. Okay, so look, should you buy one? If you can find one with a good service history that has been cared for, like Lola here, yes, 100% you should buy one. Plus, because it was never known to be an overt performance car, chances are they haven't been all that appealing to many dickhead hoons, so therefore should be in better condition than some of the other sports car alternatives. And even if it isn't in amazing condition, because parts are cheap and they're pretty fun to work on, if you're buying it as a bit of a project car, even then, yeah, you should buy one. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and what did you think of the Celica? And in this case, Lola. Let us know in the comments below. And after the video, can you hit those like, subscribe, and bell icon buttons, and go and check us out on the socials. See you next time. That is 11 times around the circumference of the Earth. And I've gone blank on what happens after that. The Earth. Out of respect and due to her age and fabulous looks, no, made that up now. Cut it down, Morris, you dickhead. Now guys, if you are sorry, go from there. Now we will be covering a few, there we go. The smell in here, it's all very 90s, which is probably why I up the line at the end there, because it was good until that last bit. Here we go, sorry. So how's the tech? Well, if you find an example of, whoa, that was terrible. And practicality up front, there's a truck going past, ruining the whole take, you bastard. Delving into that world, but just know, it's still safer than, oh, you was so close. Forget like stability control or traction control or any really active safety systems at all. And look, I don't know if my brain just stopped. There we go.